Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to see the most stupefying magic show ever performed. Startling tricks that defy the imagination. Watch closely, everybody. I take this plain piece of newspaper and roll it into a cone. And here, a full pitcher of milk, I slowly pour into the cone. I shall now stare with my magic wand, tap it, and now a beautiful bouquet of flowers. The milk, it's vanished. The magic cooking pot, empty. Well, to cook we need a little heat. What do we use for heat? Ah, this piece of paper will do. I light a match. I wonder what's cooking. Let's see. The wonderful squared circle. The square is empty. The circle is empty, too. A few magic words, alakazam, alakazoom, abracadabra, and behold, silks from nowhere. How's that? Maybe there's more magic in the box. Let's see. Ah, yes, a rabbit. But it's not alive. Maybe my magic hat can help me. It's empty. But don't worry, I will bring this rabbit to life. Here it is.
My rabbit! Tommy Martin, how dare you play tricks with my darling little Popeye?
Dad, Mom, how was it? Did you like it, Uncle Jim?
I'll say I did, Tommy. It was worth coming all the way back here for it, just to see that show.
Well, Jim, we're glad something brought you back. Good to have all of us together again.
It sure is. You know, it seems just like yesterday we were kids, playing together on the farm and getting into mischief. You remember when we went over to McGee's barn and...
Yes. But you're looking at solid, upstanding citizens now, Jim.
Why, Bill's done such a good job selling farm machinery, he's just added a new display room on his store.
And Fred. Well, we call Fred the answer man, like that fellow on the radio. As our county agent, he's still just as interested in learning new things as when Miss Otis taught him reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Good old Miss Otis. Say, what was it we used to call her?
Never mind, Jim. You never were a very good example for the children then or now, I'd say.
Oh, Mom, Uncle Jim is so a good example. I want to be like Uncle Jim when I grow up.
Well, what makes you say that?
I don't know exactly, Uncle Jim. I guess it's because you make things. It's not like farming, is it, Uncle Jim?
Here. What's going on here?
Well, Jim, Tommy's beginning to think that after he finishes school and the university, he won't want to become a farmer.
He's going to be a magician.
No, I'm not. I want to work in a great big factory, the way you do, Uncle Jim.
If you ask me, Tommy, you'd better stick to farming.
But, Uncle Jim, why? You're not sorry, are you?
I should say not. I like to make things people use.
That's what I mean, Uncle Jim.
Yeah, but, Tommy, you've got the same opportunity in agriculture, and there's a new future in farming.
Oh, shucks. Farming's nothing but the same old corn and wheat every year, and it always will be.
I don't go along with you there, Tommy.
But, Uncle Jim, someday we're not going to need nearly so many farmers anymore. Dad, you said that to men in town one day, didn't you?
Wait a minute, Tommy. We may not need so many farmers to raise food in the future, as your dad said, but we'll definitely need a new kind of farmer. A kind I think you'd like to be, because there's magic in the crops he grows.
You know about that, Tommy. We've talked about soybeans and how they're used to make many things. That's what your Uncle Jim means.
Why, today, Tommy, there are thousands of farm acres that are just as much a part of industry as any foundry or assembly line.
Oh, come on, Uncle Jim. Dad's got over 100 acres, and I bet there isn't one that's really part of industry, like you say.
Well, what do you do with a boy like this?
Take him up on it. Go ahead, Jim.
All right, Tommy. I'll take that bet. Now, first, you'll admit, won't you, that there are many things on farms that have always been used for other purposes than food. All right, let's take an example or two. Vines were used to bind early tools. and you know how long trees have been used for shelter. Animal fats were used to make soaps and candles, and animal wool and plant fibers to make clothing. But man's needs became bigger and bigger. Goods had to be manufactured in greater quantity and greater variety. Industry's demand for raw materials increased many times. Research enabled agriculture to supply a great many of these raw materials right from the crops the farmers were growing. Now, to understand how that came about, it's important to know what a plant consists of. Cellulose and lignin form the solid framework or cell walls. Sugars are the main food in the plant's diet. From surplus sugars, the plant forms starch, which it stores for future use in the bulbs and seeds and fruit. Now, fats and oils are also produced in the plant and usually stored in the seed. And then there's protein, the most important part of any living cell. These are the main constituents of any plant. The chemist, when he examines a plant, tries to find new uses, either for the plant itself or the substances which compose it. Then he goes further, and an elementary process of nature helps to explain his next step. When plants are eaten by animals, the animal's stomach becomes a factory which changes the plant's cellulose, sugars, and starches, and so on, into new products, such as milk, fat, leather, and wool. Man, with his knowledge of chemistry, also can change nature's basic building materials into new and useful products. And so, the ever-renewable plant substances of agriculture have become an inexhaustible supply of raw materials for industry. And this is the idea we call farm chemergy. So now, Tommy, let's come back to that old corn you think so little of. Why, that crop gives us almost all our starch. Takes 1.5 million acres of corn alone, as many acres as the whole state of Delaware, to give us all the starch we need. And no wonder. Industry in this country uses 1,600,000,000 pounds of starch every year. Your mother can tell you about starching her laundry. Well, in our big cities, commercial laundries use enormous quantities of starch. And even more starch is used in the manufacture of cloth itself. Starch gives cotton threads resistance to abrasion and the necessary strength to withstand the tension of the loom. Without starch, the yarn would unravel and break, and the loom would be stopped. Starch is also used in the paper industry. Starch binds the pulp fibers and strengthens a sheet so that it can withstand the manufacturing processes that follow. And in order to cast metal, for instance, in the mass production of automobile and airplane engines, sand mixed with starch is placed around a pattern. This mixture, when baked, makes a permanent mold, thanks to the adhesive property of the starch. And starch is even present in the medicine cabinet. It's the binding material in tablets, which holds the medicinal ingredients together. Then there's a new and growing industry that deals in prepared foods. It uses 250 million pounds of starch each year. Prepared foods like puddings, custards, soups, sauces, and salad dressings contain starch as a thickening agent. In short, starch is an important industrial raw material, and nature alone has been able to provide it. But the chemergist isn't satisfied to stop with starch. Through chemergy, this same starch can be used to produce sugars. And so we get other important industrial raw materials, corn syrup, and a pure sugar called dextrose. These are used in tremendous quantities by the prepared food industry for canning, baking, candy, ice cream, and soft drinks of all kinds. And, believe it or not, there's this kind of sugar in cigarettes, too. Besides flavoring the tobacco, the sugar helps to retain moisture. A solution of dextrose, or glucose as it's sometimes called, is often injected directly into the bloodstream when strength must be rebuilt quickly. Today, injections of dextrose are routine treatments in surgical and injury cases. And the corn kernel holds still more magic. It contains an interesting protein called zine, with many uses in industry. Zine, when mixed with alcohol and rosin, can be made into a liquid, more economical than shellac, and used for coating floors and wood surfaces. As part of the materials which go into the making of phonograph records, zine helps to hold the shape and strength of the finished disc. Printing inks made with zine dry quickly, speeding production from the presses. So you see, Tommy, in just the tiny corn kernel, the farmer grows essential raw materials like starch, syrup, sugar, and zine for many industries. You're a magician. How's that for magic?
That's something, all right.
Jim, you mentioned a good number of industries, but you forgot one I can think of right away.
Tractors?
No, Tommy. But dealing in power equipment, I'm bound to know something about the oil industry. You know you couldn't drive an automobile or a tractor without fuel and lubricating oils. These, of course, come from natural petroleum deposits deep in the earth. But here again, starch is used. As the drill bites deeper and deeper, a drilling fluid is used to lubricate the drill head and to prevent overheating. But this fluid tends to seep away through the sides of the well, weakening the walls so that they may even collapse. By adding starch to the drilling fluid, the sides of the well are sealed. Fluid loss and the danger of collapse are prevented. Farm equipment retailers are putting corn cobs to work. When the cobs are ground up and mixed with rice hulls, we get a soft grit blasting material. This will do a thorough job of removing the hard, thick carbon deposits on cylinders, pistons, and bearings without the danger of pitting the highly polished surfaces. That's the way I did the last overhaul on your dad's tractor engine, Tommy.
Speaking of tractors, you know, there are certain engine parts like gears, gaskets, and insulating materials which could very well come from the farm. And Tommy, that starts us off on another magic crop, cotton. Seems a long way from cotton to gears in a tractor, for instance, but today cotton is put to all sorts of other uses besides clothing. When layers and layers of cotton fabric coated with a plastic material are treated with heat and pressure, we get a solid plastic which is extremely strong, but also extremely light. It can replace lightweight metals to make an endless number of things. And today, there is even a new use for the shorter cotton lint fibers unsuited for spinning. These are made into bats used to insulate against heat and cold in the walls and roofs of buildings, and in refrigerated freight cars where their light weight is an advantage. Cotton linters, the extremely short fibers adhering to the seed, were, until recently, practically useless. They, too, have become important, not because they are fibers, but because they are about 80% cellulose. When these cellulose-rich linters are treated with different acids, new raw materials result. When cellulose acetate is made into a thick liquid and forced into the air through tiny holes, it will form threads, which, when woven, give us all sorts of rayon fabrics. From these cellulose raw materials, we also make motion picture films, plastic articles of enormous variety, quick-drying lacquers which speed up mass production in many industries, and explosives with hundreds of farm uses. The dairy farmer, too, plays his part in industry. From the many millions of pounds of skim milk available each year, a protein called casein can be separated. Casein, because of its adhesive property, is made into a water-resistant glue, And it also finds use in water paints as a binder for the color pigment. Large quantities are used to coat special printing papers so that they will take ink properly, and to make plastics used primarily for buttons, buckles, knitting needles, and novelties of all kinds. A brand new product from casein is a fiber called aralac, with most of the qualities of wool. When mixed with other fibers, aralac can be woven into a variety of attractive fabrics which give us new and different effects. Of course, corn and cotton and milk are obvious things for the chemurgist to work on. But maybe we're overlooking some things that are often discarded on a farm.
There is an awful lot of residue on a farm. Some 200 million tons every year. About 2 tons of residue for every ton of food produced.
Say, don't forget residue isn't necessarily waste. After all, I use my corn stalks and my straw in many ways. But I do think we farmers should take stock and see if we're putting our residue to its best use. Bill told us already there are industrial uses for corn cobs. And I've heard there's even a use for chicken feathers. They're beginning to make them into another new yarn, also like wool, that's good for all sorts of clothing. And industry uses a lot of wheat straw each year. About 500,000 tons go to make paper, corrugated fiber board for shipping cases, cardboard for egg case fillers, and building board. Building boards are also made from corn stalks and the stalks of the sugar cane. Straw and stalks contain large amounts of cellulose, which we know is a basic raw material for many products. So far, we've talked about staple crops and farm residues. Fred, how about telling us a little about some of the new experimental crops that are being developed?
Well, there are several 100,000 kinds of plants growing all over the world. Only about 15,000 of them were originally found in the United States. Experts believing that many foreign plants might have good possibilities in our own country began a number of years ago to bring them here from all over the world for experiment, testing, and development. From China came the tongue tree. And from Northern Europe, the rape plant. The industrial value of these plants is chiefly in their oils. India contributed a pod-bearing plant called guar. A starch-like material in its seed can be used to make papers, cosmetics, and many drugstore products. And from Russia came a dandelion called kagsagis, which has rubber in its roots. 2 large rubber companies have already made tires from this rubber. From China came another promising plant called rami. Fibers from the rami stalk are used in sails because they are strong and light. And they are used to make marine ropes, nets, and fishing lines because they are stronger wet than dry and will not rot. Crops with names like rami, guar, and the others may not seem very important to most farmers right now, but think what it would mean to the cotton farmer or the wheat farmer if any of today's new crops could turn out to be a profitable secondary crop and do the job the soybean does for the corn farmer. Why, within the memory of all of us, except Tommy or Sue, the soybean was a new crop just like those others. In 1925, farmers were growing 5 million bushels. In 1945, soybean production reached 200 million bushels. And so today, the soybean is one of America's major crops. Besides its importance for animal and human nutrition, the soybean has found all sorts of industrial uses. Automobile production is a good illustration of its versatility. Soybean oil is used as a binder for the sand molds in the foundry. A material removed from the bean is used in car lacquer. Horn buttons, light switch covers, window trim are all made of soybean meal. And now they've even developed a fiber from the soybean protein that can be used for upholstery. The soybean's record from new crop to major crop in 25 years might well be repeated with some of today's new crops, bringing new opportunities and new sources of income to the farmer.
And here's something to remember. The soybean only became a major crop after suitable harvesting equipment was developed. That's why the farm equipment industry is constantly studying new crops to anticipate the farmer's needs for new machinery.
Yes. It's through cooperation like that, between farmers and industry and government, that chemistry will achieve still further goals in the future. Scientists are constantly at work to plan needed research. This research is carried out by hundreds of industrial labs, state agricultural colleges, and by the 4 large regional research laboratories of the United States Department of Agriculture. These labs were set up in 1938 to study new uses for farm products in each region. Here is one of these $2 million laboratories. One wing is devoted entirely to test tube research, where new commercial ideas are first developed. Here, scientists conduct an endless variety of experiments to analyze different plants and develop their industrial possibilities. Promising lab discoveries must then be proved practical for commercial manufacture. So in the other wing is the pilot plant, actually a well-equipped factory that bridges the gap between the test tube and the commercial use. Factory equipment is used to test on a commercial scale the new products and methods of manufacture discovered in the laboratory. In addition, many industrial companies use their regular commercial machines for tests on a still larger scale. Clearinghouse for all information about commercial research and achievements is an organization of industrialists, farmers, and scientists called the National Farm Commercial Council. So thanks to scientific research, in which industry has played a tremendous part, farm chemistry in a very few years has grown from just an idea to a well-accepted fact.
And Fred, in addition to research, there are 2 industries, the petroleum industry and the farm machinery industry, that play a direct role in the development of chemistry. We know that chemistry depends on efficient farming. The farmer knows that efficient farming depends on mechanical power. Power helps him to take care of his soil. Power helps him to grow better crops and to grow them more profitably. And because of mechanical tools and power, farmers today are able to get bigger yields from each acre of land. This means that we can grow enough food to take care of our needs and still have fertile land left to grow crops for industry. Mechanical power has also made manpower available for this new work. One man today, with the proper equipment, can do the work which required many men just a few years ago. The farm machinery companies have been working constantly to develop new machines and to improve the equipment at the farmer's disposal. They have developed high compression engines of greater efficiency to save the farmer time and money on every job he does. High compression engines designed to burn gasoline for greater convenience and economy. The oil companies have also been carrying on a continuous research program to supply better products for the farm. Not only have they improved gasoline to run the high compression engines, but better oils and greases and gear lubricants to prolong the life of all equipment. And new products to help the farmer in many ways. Rust preventatives, stock sprays, insecticides, to name just a few. All industries are vitally interested in the future of agriculture. They know that the prosperity and the future of our entire country is based on a sound, prosperous agriculture. That's why businessmen, bankers, and manufacturers are all working with us in the development of farm chemistry.
I guess not one of us here in this room has any doubts now that industry needs and uses farm products.
And since that's the case, we know the farmer actually does play a part in making things, just as any man in the factory.
Sure. And what's more, farm chemistry has opened up a whole new future for farming. Why, the research that's going on in our labs isn't just for today. It's for tomorrow, the next day, and 100 years from now, when agriculture will be called upon to supply a still larger part of industry's needs.
And farm chemistry means all sorts of new products that make living more comfortable and more attractive.
It means more people working, both in industry and agriculture.
Are you beginning to get the idea, Tommy? You are.
It means a farmer, like Dad, is growing magic crops.
That's right, Tommy. I guess you could change a handful of soybeans into a necktie by sleight of hand. But think of it. Chemergy actually does it. Say, why doesn't anyone around here ask me about those packages I brought along? What's happened to children nowadays? Are they getting too polite? When I was your age, I was curious when any grown-up arrived with a package. I figured it might be something for me. Here's some material, Sue. Your mother can make you a new dress. Then you can tell your friends you're all dressed up in skim milk. And Tommy, here's a tie that was really made from soybeans.
I guess that's magic all right, eh, Tommy?
You bet, Dad.
By the way, Tommy, didn't you lose a bet to your Uncle Jim? You said there was an acre on our farm that was a part of industry. Remember?
I guess you're right, Dad.
So we're partners now, Tommy. You're agriculture and I'm industry. You don't owe money between partners.
Okay, industry. I'll shake on that.